Hi everyone. Once again, I would like to introduce our next speaker is Chris Uglietta, Senior Marketing Manager at uh, oh,
Data.ai, sure.
yes, thank you for your help. And today Chris will speak about state of mobile gaming in 2023. Chris, stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Sure, I'm Chris Uglietta, marketing lead for gaming at data.ai. I'm currently in a very cold and icy Austin, Texas, so I hope you're comfortable wherever you are in the world. Looking forward to kind of sharing with you what's going on, what we saw in 2022, and some thoughts we have on going forward in 2023. Please throw your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to monitor it. Anything that's relevant, I'll address real time. I'm not going to do a big Q&A at the end. However, I do implore you to do a few things. One is connect with me on LinkedIn or through the platform here. Looking forward to having more robust conversations afterwards. Two, I'm going to drop this link right now in the chat. A lot of what I'm presenting today is based on Data AI's recently published State of Mobile report. It's very robust. It's a great way to kind of learn about what's going on in the industry. And if you enjoy what you see there, you can actually go in and do a free trial of our product. And then finally, I'll plug it now and I'll plug it again. But I do have a podcast called Game Changers, of course, focused on the mobile gaming market. Let me plug that into the chat and would appreciate it if you follow. And if you'd like to participate in that, hit me up and we'll visit that again later on some slides. So once again, I'm Chris Uglietta with Data AI. And before I get going, just a note, none of this is financial advice. Like think about like Reddit and some of my favorite subreddits there. None of it's financial advice. We do curate this data, and you can use it to your liking. But what I'm telling you is not really meant to be investment advice. Just so you know, so App Annie is our previous brand. We've now rebranded to Data.ai. And we really want to make sure with this new branding that it reflects our company. So Data.ai is a company that provides mobile data, consumption data, download data, engagement data for all mobile apps on all platforms. It's sort of like a Bloomberg for mobile data. And the AI portion is on our back end, how we validate that data and make sure that we're delivering the most trustworthy and accurate data to the market. So now our name really reflects our back end and our product. And a lot of folks are missing kind of that Annie piece. So feel free to call it App Annie if that's something you want to do. We work with some of the biggest brands, and we're lucky to have just some of the most sophisticated customers out there. I've done a lot of content with these folks, and appreciate them. And if you want to become one of these brands, please reach out. We really have proven tons of value with these folks. Okay, so let's get on to it. Today we're going to talk about some highlights and lowlights, unfortunately, for 2022 and kind of the state of the mobile games market. I'm going to start real high level there. We'll talk about the app market in general, and then we'll dive down into mobile gaming and then into some of the genres, unfortunately, which are under fire. And then we'll talk just briefly about hyper casual and the success they're seeing despite this down market. What can we learn from that? And then some opportunities we're seeing by using the Data AI platform and seeing where success exists. So that's the overall view. And let's jump in here at the top line. So in the global, this is not just gaming. This is the total app landscape. This is taken again from that report, which I've linked. Please hit that link. We're seeing worldwide downloads at 255 billion. That is still up 11%. And that's pretty noteworthy to me because the IDC has just come out a week and a half ago with their note that mobile phone shipments worldwide across all manufacturers are down 18.3%. So even though we're not really growing. It doesn't appear that we're growing kind of new users of phones at the moment, or replacement devices. That we're still up 11% on download. So there's a really still significant appetite, and notable growth on downloads, appetite for the apps and growth on downloads. That said, spend is at 167 billion, which is quite a robust market. We're down 2%, so kind of flat to down on spend. I think in any other industry, all things considered, right now they'd be pretty excited by that. But of course, here in mobile, we're accustomed to pretty hyper growth. That is troubling. However, using a tool like data AI, you can definitely find opportunities, and figure out how to optimize around, and make the best of the current situation. Time spent, users are up at 5 hours a day on average globally across all apps and games. That's significant. Obviously, my take is that's why you're consuming and doing other things. So it's not a primary device, but certainly something that is still getting consumer eyeballs and attention, and represents a major opportunity. So we're downloading more apps, and we're spending more time using them and on our phones than ever. So there's still a very ripe audience there, and that's ultimately the silver lining that we're going to be you'll kind of hear more about during my presentation. Overall, not just gaming, but overall mobile ad spend is up about 14%. So that says that advertisers know, they're seeing that this is the place for impressions, and particularly trackable impressions. And so they're continuing to invest in the platform. So money's still flowing. However, maybe a little bit less on the consumer spend side. It's more of the advertiser spend side that we're seeing. And then total hours spent, so cumulative hours spent, 4.1 trillion in 2022. That's up 9%, so pretty significant. Let's look closer here. Hey, I don't see any questions yet, so give it a shot. Hit that chat. Actually, maybe I'm in the wrong one. Looking at weekly consumption in mobile games. So this is specifically games. Downloads, like I said, up about 8%. Spend down about 5%. So a little bit more of a decline on the game side. This is in-app purchase. And then total hours are up. So, kind of a mixed bag here. I would say that this data is not highly actionable. One of the nice things about our platform is that you can always go deeper, and that's what we're seeing here on this slide, pulled from data AI. So we see that average time in mobile apps is surpassing 5 hours. That's up 9% from 2020. And each geography is not the same. So we see the growth, across the top 10 geographies, about 9%, that up about 9%. But time spent in the fastest geos, which would be Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Singapore, are up at about 68% growth across all of them. So, pretty significant differences. And, with some of the data sets that we have at hand, this is one place where you can, see that not everything's the same, and maybe this will impact your strategy. And we can talk about that. Or I will talk about that a little later. And just notably here on the game side, that time spent, particularly in sandbox games, has grown about 25% since 2021. So, I'm a dad with kids that play Roblox. I could see that firsthand. Okay, so consumer spending in mobile games has unfortunately dropped this year, but downloads are surging, as I mentioned. One thing to note is that the downloads are continuing despite Apple's privacy changes that have reshaped mobile marketing, and really we'll see some data coming up here that suggests that while more generally consumable and appealing games like hyper casual can still get those downloads, likely because hyper targeting is not as necessary. the games that really rely on whales and users that spend a lot of money, deeply engaged, less casual, appear to be having trouble finding the inventory they need and converting those users and converting those users into revenue. So on top here, we see the consumer spend in games versus disposable income growth index. So the red bars are disposable income, which you see going down, and that's the same data set top to bottom. This is in the US. On the bottom, we have apps. So games on top, apps on bottom. And then the thin line you see is actually spend on games versus apps. And we see that on games, it's actually declining. Games represent about 60% of all apps in the store, and the spending is cooling there. But on the other hand, apps are actually getting more spend than ever. So, one sort of hot take here is consumers are looking at their expenditures on things like Netflix, maybe their Uber Eats, et cetera, as sort of bills. And this is just sort of part of my quality of life. This is how I spend my money. Whereas spend on their shooter game or their racing game is more of a kind of like a frill and something that as their sense of disposable income or actual disposable income goes down, they will do less of. So, question is, how do we let as game publishers, as studios, build games or build features or market it in a way that really makes consumers realize it's all entertainment, it's all enjoyment, and to me, even a takeout dinner, that's entertaining. It's an experience you're paying for. It's different than cooking at home, and of course, Netflix and Spotify, all the rest are another form of consumption. So, how do we kind of lump games in as part of that and get away from this stigma that there's gamers and there's people? Everyone plays games, and hyper casual has proven that. And I think that's really the evolution of where we need to go in terms of the mindset. Again, this is just United States data here, but interesting to see that wallets are still wide open for apps, whereas games, it's changed quite a bit. Noting this is kind of a nod to what I said before about targeting, and here we see that the number of apps surpassing in different spend buckets. So apps that have $10 million of revenue versus 100 versus a billion, and these are games. We see the revenue decline quite different. So on the billion on the bottom, we see that the actual revenue is declining. So these are likely, these are the games that are really dependent on microtransactions, really dependent on whales and big spending and spending overall by customers rather than ad spend. And a lot of that is driven by targeting the right user, acquiring the right user, and then running the right live events to get them to spend. So a lot more struggle there. I think this really is definitely a mix of the discretionary, disposable income, but also IDFA and targeting, and a little bit difficult to tease those out. But I know that there's folks out there that have very pointed views on that. But overall, smaller games having more success in this environment, and also I would note that that's likely because their budgets are smaller and they can continue to grow and not completely exhaust the available inventory to their target market. So let's take a look, unfortunately, at I would call the biggest losers here, and really where this is impacting. And I'm a big race fan. I don't know if you can see my background. I've got a simulator and just love racing. So this really hits me in the heart, especially as a former Zynga person, and appreciate Natural Motion and what they're doing with CSR2. But we see that CSR2 title is down 33%. Need for Speed from EA down 44%. So pretty big hits here. And the RPI, revenue per install data, showing that the new installs, like I was sort of talking about, haven't offset the decline. So that suggests that, yeah, they can get some installs, but it's just not the quality of install they were getting before, where that person is spending money. So again, is this targeting, or is this just income? I would say demo the data AI tool and dig in deeper for yourself and see what you can come up with. I'll leave it at that. So the shooter genre, another big, this is definitely, a heavy kind of consumer spend genre, not ad spend driven, ad impression driven. Um, uh, was down 24% on revenue, and that's while downloads were up a couple percent. So still getting more or less the same number of downloads, but that's just not converting to revenue. And it's not that these games have gotten worse. I mean, they're the same super fun, interactive games. It's just we were having trouble getting folks to spend there. So again, how do we kind of convert the mentality that spending in games is the same as spending in Netflix and other apps, and that's all part of your entertainment package as a human. And Call of Duty also, falling victim to this current environment, down 24% of revenue, which when you think about it, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is not a small issue for these publishers, and definitely having an impact. The action genre down 18% on revenue, while downloads were up 11%. So, Brawl Stars, which is, quite a hit, losing about half its revenue in 2022. So real killer there. And then brawlers and fighting declined 20% as well. Mortal Kombat down, and the list goes on. So, what I'd say is, if you jump into data AI and use the Game IQ tool, you can dive a little deeper here and start to understand what are the differences in features between these games and other ones which are having more success, or the demographics. There's a lot of ways to slice this, but for now, I'm just kind of giving you the update. Mobile spend is up, as I said, so advertisers are continuing to spend. It's a 5-year CAGR, about 18.5%. So, this is the place to spend to reach customers. Brands are coming in strong as well. We think that they're actually filling the gap, less spend by apps and games. So just more brand marketing. So, this is definitely a space where, for example, hyper casual, can really see that revenue from brand marketing, and hyper casual is really a shining example of how, with the hybrid monetization model where customers are spending and then brands and apps are spending for that in-app advertising, it's actually working. Since downloads are up, there's definitely still an appetite to play games, but less of an appetite to spend on games, or less ability to target. So hyper casual, with its really broad appeal, can take advantage of this and pick up, maybe a little less competitive inventory that, in the past, and really capitalize. So kudos there. And I'm really excited to kind of see how this plays out. And, I think that also, we've seen some really great games come out there, not to discount just the creativity and the value of fun. Okay, so to wrap up with, some opportunities we've identified, we see through the data AI platform, get creative. So focus on your creative. I'm going to follow up with slides here. Leverage IPs, and then look beyond the US and iOS. So get creative. Let's not just focus on we're playing to a demographic. So if it was social casino, we're playing to women, a certain age group. Let's focus on, what is it that a user is coming to the game and enjoying, and let's communicate that in our creative, and then just test it in many iterations. And I'm sure you'll hear from other folks specifically in the creative space to talk about this, but don't miss out that you need to look at competitive as well. And that's one thing that the AI tool is super helpful with, is looking at what your competitors are doing, seeing how much spend is behind those types, and then making sure that you're not missing that type of ad creative in your bucket. Leverage IPs. So, one thing that obviously reduces IPMs and, cost per install is something recognizable. So intellectual property is a classic way to do that. We see this as a better time than ever to do so, but make sure that you're doing it the right way. Gordon Ramsay's shooter game is just not going to work. You need to make sure that you leverage the data that ourselves and others offer to understand what's working, but then also test it. Ideally, work out a deal with the licensor where you can test creative for that IP before it goes live, just to make sure that it's going to convert the way you think and you've modeled out that deal and the economics appropriately. And then finally, maybe it's time to look beyond classic, US, iOS, and sort of the main markets for your spend. Look into the tool, understand where else you could find pockets of inventory and folks that do want to play your games, and maybe a less competitive bidding situation there. So yeah, hit the link, download the report, please. Stay to mobile. You can also scan this QR code. A lot more juicy information for you to consume. It's interactive, so you're going to find data perhaps about the other geography, all geographies. So grab that. We have a mobile app that's a great way to consume data as well. Just a quick go-to. It's really nice when you're at a networking event and you have a question, you just jump right into it. And then finally, please follow my podcast. And if you've got something you want to talk about, you think it would be interesting, or you just want to chat, hit me up. I'm really open to speaking to a variety of people on it, and would appreciate you reaching out. If you'd like to have a Q&A or any questions, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Uglietta, and certainly appreciate your time here. It's a really terrific conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I hope to see you during our next Hyper Games conferences as well. Okay, thanks everyone. See you tomorrow.